welcome to the Monster Report. Nick Adam Poling here. I have a special guest with me via Skype, Mr. John Bellotti Jr. How we doing, John?
Good. How you doing today, Nick?
Doing real great, doing great. I had recently interviewed Seismic and 13 AM, and they mentioned your name, and I said, well, I got to have John on here. I've actually seen your artwork floating around there on social media, and it really stands out to me as outstanding, and what you did for, Seismic and 13 AM. So I wanted to bring you on here, showcase a little about yourself, what influences you, and kind of seeing where you're going from here. So great to have you on here. Tell me, where are you joining us from? Where are you located?
Right now I'm living in Brooklyn, New York. I'm a native New Yorker, born and raised in Staten Island, New York, which has the highest COVID infection rate in all the 5 boroughs. But yes, currently I'm in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, which is on the southern part of Brooklyn, to be more exact.
Okay, very awesome. Good for you to, and of course you're sitting comfortably in this time of pandemic at home, like we all are, and doing some work, and and you're still able to, do some work on your artwork, because everything you can do, you're doing right there at your computer desk, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah. Well, tell me about, your style. Every artist kind of has influences, what drives them, maybe some of the stuff that they've seen out there that influences them in certain directions, what colors they use, what tools they like to use. So tell me about your influences.
So my biggest influence right now, especially since I do a lot of kaiju posters, is if you ever seen the Heisei Godzilla film posters from 85 up until Destroyer, into actually I think Mega Gyrus, was created by a Japanese artist named Noriyoshi Orai, and his style is it's not realistic like Yuji Kaida. Yuji Kaida is another fantastic kaiju artist, but Orai he kind of took the Godzilla designs, like the concepts, and made a poster out of them, which is really unique. And one of my favorite posters of all time is from Orai. He did a Road Warrior poster, which I tried to sort of replicate in my Mad Max Fury Road poster. But Orai is definitely my biggest influence right now. His stuff has a lot of power, a lot of grit, and he's a master painter. He doesn't just paint monsters well, he paints everything incredibly well. I call him the Drew Struzan of Japan, and Drew Struzan is another influence. And you've definitely seen Drew Struzan's work. He's done stuff for George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, John Carpenter. He did the Thing poster, Big Trouble in Little China, the first Harry Potter film, all the Indiana Jones films. The guy's a legend. Like, his name is synonymous with poster art. So those two are my biggest. And Alphonse Mucha, who's 18th, early 19th century Art Deco, Art Nouveau artist. And you've definitely seen his work. He has like the beautiful women with the ornamentation surrounding them, gorgeous compositions. So I'd say those 3 guys are my biggest influence, on top of my friends that are artists and modern artists that I see. So that's kind of where I'm at in terms of influence, basically.
Obviously, from your love of kaiju films, obviously Godzilla and others. Have you always been kind of a kaiju fan since early on?
Yeah. That's like so ingrained in my DNA, is being a kaiju fan. It's the first thing I remember loving, and then it was always kaiju, Bruce Lee / kung fu movies, Spider-Man, military stuff like G.I. Joe's, Transformers, anything with the Navy SEALs, all stuff like that. I was always obsessed with as a kid. Comic books was another big one, but yeah, kaiju were always on my brain. I've always collected kaiju stuff. I remember watching them on the local TV networks here in New York, and so yeah, and I think the first one I've ever watched, I remember, is Godzilla versus Ghidorah, which is kind of scary for a kid when you think about it.
Yeah, it's surprising sometimes the ones we start with, how we still ended up as kaiju fans, even despite, whatever the film might have been.
Yeah.
But so, like, you mentioned Drew Struzan. Yeah, I love his art, how he combines all the different characters in different sizes, combining them on the poster art, and
Yeah.
even some things like you wouldn't think of, like the Thing. It doesn't maybe look like all of the different Indiana Jones or Star Wars posters that he's done, but the tools he uses, he's still very much always has been one to use paint as his palette. And now we live in the digital age. I don't think he ever maybe transitioned to digital.
No, no.
Yeah, he was always a lover of paint, canvas, and making it pop and come to life. So I definitely see that as an influence to you. So tell me about the tools you use, in this day and age we live in, putting your art together.
Well, right now, currently, I'm using Adobe Photoshop to draw, and then I use Adobe Illustrator to finish all my posters, all my color work. And I use a Wacom Mobile Studio Pro 13-inch tablet to draw everything on now. I used to use my iMac, which is what I'm talking to you on now, and I had the Wacom drawing tablet, but the tablet, it's on the desk. Where your mouse would be is where the pen and tablet would be. So you're looking at the screen, but the tablet is straight down. Now, with my drawing tablet, it's like right in front of me, and I'm literally drawing on the tablet. And my work has gotten a lot more detailed, a lot more involved. It takes a lot longer to save my pieces now because I'm getting more and more detail and creating my own custom brushes when I do my pieces now. But originally, I started using when I started doing this back in 2014, when I started drawing Godzilla stuff. I've always been an artist, first of all, but before Godzilla, I was doing a lot of pinup girls, comic book stuff, and with Godzilla, I was drawing in pencil. So I was doing these really detailed pencil sketches, almost like to the detail of someone like Alex Ross. You're familiar with Alex Ross, right?
Yes.
Right. So he's another influence, but I was doing really detailed drawings in pencil that would take me forever, and then scan them into my computer and then color on the computer. So now with the tablet situation, I just draw it all. I do like a basic contour outline, and then I just export it to Adobe Illustrator. I came up with a better trick where Adobe Illustrator has something called auto trace, and I never used it for my art in terms of some people, the way I was working was I would do my drawing in Photoshop, bring it over, and then if you're familiar with Adobe Illustrator, you take the pen tool and you sort of trace over it like an inking, sort of like when a comic book artist hands off his pencil sketches to an inker, they would ink it and then it goes to a color. So I was doing that process and it would take me. Now I just did a poster and there's so much detail in them, and I'm like, this is going to take me forever, that I decided to use the auto trace on my own drawings, and it worked out amazing. And I was like, this is the way to do it. Like, this is the way, to quote the Mandalorian. It worked out really well. And then I sort of go back and I add stuff and I treat it like a painting. And so that's basically my newest process. And now, again, I'll talk about my upcoming projects where I'm definitely going to be using it more because you're always trying to look for shortcuts, right? When you have deadlines, when you have a day job and you want to, I always have like a list of things I want to draw. So it's like, I got this one done, that one done. I like to start this one. And it's like, there's never enough time. So any sort of shortcut you can come up with to expedite the process is something I'm a big fan of. So that's basically what I use now to create my artwork.
Yeah, and you mentioned doing the line art first. Do you have some of the work? I think I saw some of the work on your site where it is just the line art, where maybe monochromatic, or you kept it that way?
Yes, there was. I would do basically like a black and white drawing in Photoshop or in pencil, and when I would do it in pencil, I do all the shading, all the details, bring that into Illustrator, and recreate all of it, and try to figure out how to do an Illustrator. Basically, just the black and white outline, and then I go in. And I use photo reference. It's very obvious in my work. I'm a big fan of photo reference, and I use that, and then I just basically have the photo reference on one side and then my painting on the other, and that's how I work. And I just look at the details and I look at the colors and how they play off each other. And with Illustrator, I'm not sure how many people out there have used it that are watching this, but it's not geared for traditional painting. Not as much as Photoshop or Corel Painter is. So Illustrator, it's like a math problem because you have to really figure out how you want to go about doing something because there's no straight line. Where Photoshop, you can make you make brushes that can do anything, and you could do it. I do that in Illustrator. I do all custom brushes now. But Illustrator, you can't do the soft blends, the airbrush look. So it has a different look. What I like about Illustrator is that when you print it out, you can print it out as small as you want or as big as you want, and it never loses its resolution because it's all vector-based artwork, as opposed to Photoshop, which is all pixel-based. So with Photoshop, I'm sure you know, the bigger you make it, the more blurry it's going to get. Whereas Illustrator, I could take one of my pieces and put it on like the side of a building, and it's going to look amazing, and the colors really pop, and that's why I've stuck with Illustrator for so long, basically.
Yeah, that's what's cool about those vector, colors and art that you can stretch out, and all it does is do that math equation to stretch out that, and you don't lose your resolution. You may sacrifice certain things, but as far as what your style of art, actually, it kind of lends itself to that, because the colors that you use and how much that makes your art pop, and I think it makes it stand out. And speaking of, just did the interview with 13 AM and Seismic, and I know you did a little bit of work with them, and I did that episode where I got a Megadon out of the box, so he's part of the collection now, because he just is such a cool looking figure there, and I love the colors and all that. So tell me about kind of the work you do, either for commission or just freelance work that you do for some of these guys, and tell me about like what you did for those guys.
Sure. Let me preface this with that. For the longest time, I never took freelance work because I had a day job, and I would go home from work and do this stuff on my own. It would take so long that I never had a lot of time. But then last year, people were asking me for commissions, and I said, okay, I'll do a commission. And I didn't feel good about it because I thought it was taken away from my own work. And then Corona hit, and then I found myself home for about 7 months because my job was shut down. And I started doing a lot of commissions, and I've grown to really like it. And I always had comic book conventions to sell my work at as supplemental income. And now there's no comic conventions. So now I'm like, well, now what do I do? So now I started really pushing my work out to try to get more freelance work this year, actually, and more commission work. And so far it's been okay. It's a tall mountain to climb for sure. There's a lot of competition out there. But for Chris and Alex, they came up to me, I want to say last summer, and they told me about what they wanted to do, and I was really excited. And I think I just moved, so I was still setting up my studio, and they asked me to do a header card art for Megadon. And I said, yeah, sure. And I did this, I based it off the toy and what they wanted. And because the video game art looks a lot different than the toy, and I'm trying to be more authentic to the toy because I'm a purist like that. I like things to look, if that's the toy, then I'm going to draw it to look like the toy, which is my sort of philosophy on doing my posters. Like I always wanted, and we could talk about why I started doing the posters, but going back to the 13 AM games, they wanted a header card art. And I said, yeah, I've never done it before, but I've always wanted to do it because I love the designer vinyl toy world. So I did it for them, and it worked out really well. And then they wanted to do, the one that you have, the Frost version, the Arctic Blast.
Yep.
So I just took the old drawing and changed the color around, and they came out with that one. It looks great. And they have a new one called Ganira, which is a female crab. So I did that. That was this year, actually. That was back in the spring. I did that for them. It was just more header card art. And, it's got to be smaller. And I'm only really just doing the kaiju itself. I'm not doing anything else. And they have someone else for that stuff. And it worked out well. Like, it looks really, really good.
Yeah. And I understand why you would want to kind of focus more on, like, the physical toy and how a 3D, real toy, might have certain gloss on it, and you have, almost the feel of plastic, vinyl in front of you when you see the art. That's what you're maybe kind of going after.
Yeah.
Whereas the video game is cool in its own way, but of course the video game may have certain kind of lighting ideals for it,
Right.
because of gameplay. So I can kind of see that. And so yeah, when you think about the challenges, when it comes to like how you might approach a commission, a freelance, or just something, you just want to put together, whether it's like framing. You talked about like posters,
Right.
some of these things are challenges, and you might consider them. And I find a lot of artists, they even take those restrictions and look at them as, how can I make this an advantage? So tell me about some of those challenges you've had that you've turned around and made that something good.
Well, that's something, again, that's something I'm starting to deal with now as I get more into the professional side of illustration. Whereas when I do it for myself, I could do whatever I want. I could do literally anything. And thankfully, I found an audience for it. But for example, there's a project I just worked on. Knock on wood, hopefully I get accepted. It's an art book for, I don't want to say it, but let's say it has a lot to do with xenomorphs. And it's the second xenomorph movie. And the restrictions, because it was 20th Century Fox, which is now Disney, which is crazy when you think about it.
I know.
Yeah, it's mind blowing. They had a list of actors you can use, and the actors were like, a bunch of Colonial Marines and Paul Reiser. I'm saying it all without saying a name, which is really funny. And
I think we all know where you're going.
yeah, exactly. And they said you could use Sigourney Weaver, but it has to go through her agent, and that could delay the release of the book. And my idea was to do the xenomorph coming out of the water, like really menacing, and having the little young girl in front of it, from that, really, because that's one of my that's one of my favorite movies, first of all. And it has some of the most iconic imagery of the 20th century cinematic experience in it. And that scene where it comes out of the water, and just as it makes its full reveal, it cuts off. I wanted to finish that reveal with the alien standing over her. And I was like so married to that concept. And then they said, oh no, you can't use that actress. And I was like, oh man. And I said, well, maybe I could do the one xenomorph. And I said, but that defeats the purpose of that movie, because it's the name plus an S at the end, so it's plural rather than singular. So, when you think of that movie, there's more than just one xenomorph, and then there's the big mother xenomorph. And I said, all right, well, now I have to figure out what to do. I said, I'm not going to put any actors in it. I don't want to have the backs of people. I just went full xenomorph. I did like two in the foreground and the two in the background, and like the big mother coming out like in the middle. And I'm very happy with it. I'm very, very happy. It took me a little while, but that's when I started messing around with my auto trace just to save time, where I was just tracing my drawings as opposed to like redoing them, because the xenomorphs have like that biomechanical facial, they have the hoses and everything. And I said, oh my God, like that's going to be a total nightmare doing that in Illustrator. So I had to really figure out how to do that. So I made a brush that looked like a tube that you would see in a swimming pool, like a vacuum or something. And however I drew the stroke, it'd have a tube, and then I'd have to sort of go back and add a gradient to it. It was definitely a mathematical illustration trying to figure that out. So that's just one example of a challenge that you face. Or, let's say I'm doing I did an independent movie poster last year, and they wanted like certain images, and the guy was really easy to work with. I actually met him at G-Fest, and he was doing he was a producer, and he had this little indie movie coming out called Monster Force Zero. And he's like, here's a bunch of pictures. And he's like, use this one because it looks more fierce. And I said, okay. What I did was I came up with I gave him 3 options, which you should always give people more than one option, but never more than 3, and never less than 3, I think. And I did 3 different compositions, and they picked the one they liked, but they said, can you add this part to it and that part to it? They said, well, that messed up the composition. And I said, no. But compositions tend to be, there's a flow to a composition. And when you mess up that flow, I feel it. It's weird. I feel like in here, I'm like, oh, that doesn't look good. And my brain hurts. And I'm like, no. So there is definitely, I remember that was a little bit of a challenge, trying to figure out okay, I got to place this character here. And now maybe if I do, and I said, oh, let me just make him bigger. And then that solved the problem. So that's just sort of some of the challenges. Or, another challenge is deadlines. Like, when do you need this by? Oh, I need it in a week. All right, well then you're going to pay double because it's going to take me a lot longer to do. My biggest challenge right now is I want to redo my Gamera 3 poster. The problem with that movie is that Iris doesn't move. If you've seen it, I know you've seen it, but Iris, it just stands there like this the whole time. And it only moves in like the CG parts of the film. And there's that one scene where it's in the sky with the arms out and the wings. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. But like trying to place Iris and the Gamera 99 suit in a composition is just giving me such a headache. I have yet to come up with like a good solid composition for that movie. Part 1 and 2 are easy, but Iris has just proven to be very challenging. So that's something that I'm still working on. So that's some insight into the stuff that artists face.
Yeah, and I think when you were talking about the xenomorph, I can kind of see it in my head, that scene, and how you might like the characters in the foreground for the sake of scale to show off how big the queen alien might be. And and that's something that, well, it's like, well, you got the the other aliens and other objects you could use to use for scale, because you want it to look massive, of course, because it is, after all, the the queen. So I could see that as a challenge. And things like deadlines, like you said, that's definitely an advantage. It's like I could charge more because it's like I can give you maybe quality. I could maybe give you value. I could give you a lot of things, but I might not be able to give you all of those things.
Right.
So pick one. So it's like, how do you want it? Do you want it fast, or do you want it good? And so time is definitely a part of those challenges. And so when you get the process in place, you kind of explained a little bit of the process when you have a new piece like that. Tell me about so like if you get a commission from somebody, what's the process from A to B to C to the final product?
That's a good question, because like I'm wearing a shirt right now. This was it's a company called Last Bastion Studios, and this was, you can see it here, a commission I did, and they make a designer vinyl. It's called Ragnar. It's this turtle monster, and they commissioned me to do this T-shirt as part of their Kickstarter. And they said we kind of want it to look like this drawing that a friend of ours did. So this creature, if you look at the toy, it's kind of like Megadon. It's very smooth. There's not a lot of like lines and detail. And I had to like really make it my own and make it very liney and add a lot of texture to it. And I'll say, okay, here's my idea. Let me do like a sketch for you. So I do a sketch with my, with the idea I have, and they go, cool, can you maybe do this? I'm like, okay. And then you sort of figure out what you charge for sketches and revisions and stuff like that. And then you say, okay, well, so what do you think of this revision? And they'll say, good, go for it. So you go for it. And every step of the process, I would send them an update, like, this is what it looks like as just black and white. They said, cool. Then I would do flat color and say, this is what the colors look like. And they say, cool. Because once, you start jumping into it with Illustrator, especially, it's very hard to go back. I mean, I don't have it set up where every single layer is like a shadow layer and a highlight layer. I just sort of, like I said, treat it like a painting. So it's very hard to go back. So I sort of break it down in steps for them, give them updates, see what they think, and just sort of go from there. And then say, okay, this is going to be the final stretch. And they say, okay, great. And then that's how I approach it. And that's how I approach any commission. Basically, someone had a very nice woman named Kate, and her husband's name is Josh. And I met them at G-Fest. They help out my buddy Michael Tchaikovsky at Vampire Robots every year at G-Fest at his table. And Josh is a fan of my work, and really sweet couple. And she sent me a message, I want to say in August, and she said, Josh loves Godzilla 85, and he, always talks about it. And she's like, I want to commission you to make a poster. What do you charge? And I said, for that I charge her, I believe it's like $250, which is, pretty standard for something like that. And I said, what do you want? And she's like, just the 85. I said, okay, I'll give you the 85. And what I do now is I get the photos I want to use, which is actually, no, I've always done that. I take all my photo reference, which is, I can't believe I forgot to say this. I take all the photo reference, and sometimes I'll spend weeks and months looking for good photos. And I cut them out in Photoshop, and I make my composition with all the photos first. That's the first thing I actually do before I start a poster of anything. And then when I get the photos, I break it apart and I just draw the individual pieces. And then when I color them, I just reassemble them to the way I had the composition in Photoshop. So for Kate, I said, here's like 3 different compositions I'm making with these photos. What do you think? And she's like, I like the second one, but I like the first one. The first one's color. I said, okay. So I just combined it, and she liked it. And then she's like, can you post it in late September, because his birthday is like September 22nd. I said, yeah, that's no problem. I know you want to surprise him. And so I said, I'll make you a small one and I'll make you a big one. So she actually had like a big 18 by 24 made up for him, and she had it framed. And she showed me a picture, and it looked really cool. And that's a nice story. There's always nightmare stories. There's always horror stories, but I luckily have had really good experiences so far. Can't complain.
Some jobs are more difficult than others. Some clients are more particular than others, and maybe trying to convey to you what they're after, but sometimes putting it into English words,
yes,
is where it becomes difficult.
Right.
You call it your site, and we'll give you the chance to plug all your social media presence and your website, but you call it Robo7, and maybe you can tell me a little backstory of what that is, and what's next for Robo7.
Well, the backstory is easy. Like most things that have come to life in this world, it didn't really take much thought. I was a huge fan. I still am, of the anime called Giant Robo, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but it's based on, remember Johnny Sokko and his flying robot?
Yeah.
Well, the anime is based on that, and it's incredible. It's the greatest superhero story I think I've ever seen. The way that The Incredibles is like the greatest Fantastic Four movie ever made, Giant Robo to me is like the greatest superhero kung fu kaiju giant robot combination I've ever seen. And artist Jeff Zorno, that's like his favorite, sort of geek out. So there's Giant Robo, and Ultra 7 is my favorite Ultraman or Ultra Brother. And so I just combine Robo and the number 7. And number 7 is lucky in Japanese, and I always liked the number 7 as a kid. So I don't know why, I just like the number 7. And that's really all it is. That's really where it came from. And it's just, Robo 7. It's cool. It could be, I could be a kaiju artist. I could be an anime artist. I could be a comic artist. It could be anything. So that's really the genesis of where it came from.
Cool. And then, tell me what's next for you. Obviously, visiting your site, you see a lot of the things that you could purchase. And by the way, I was looking, and I was kind of looking at what might stand out to me. I was looking at your 54 poster, and with that one really stood out to me, and that is one I'm going to be placing an order for, because I got to have that in my office is when I saw that. So
awesome.
Yeah. So obviously we can order some of your posters. We can contact you. What's kind of coming up next for you with Robo7?
Right. Well, with the pandemic, I think I've drawn every single thing I've ever wanted to draw in my life this year. Thankfully, which is great because I got all that stuff out of the way, and now I can focus on other things. So I have the Xenomorph thing I was telling you about. It's going to be an art book. I'm not going to say the company. The deadline, I think, is coming up soon for all the artists to get their work in. And hopefully I'll find out at the end of the year, the beginning of next year, if I get into that book. And it'll be like my first published artwork outside of what I've done for GFan, because I've done GFan covers and stuff like that. And that same company is also making a Halloween art book that I submitted my work for. And that's something I haven't really been able to share, because once you share it, it kind of negates the purpose of getting your work published, because if everyone has seen it, why are they going to buy it in an art book? So it's cool. I did a really cool Michael Myers with Laurie Strode and Dr. Loomis in the house. It's pretty neat. So I have those two. I have a few competitions I entered. Hopefully I hear something back. My big personal project right now is finally doing an Ultraman poster. It's going to have 19 kaiju in it. My biggest poster ever. I got it down to where I'm drawing one kaiju a day, and it's just basic line work, and I'll finish it in Illustrator. So that's my next big personal project. I haven't really pursued anything freelance because work has been busy, but if anybody has any commissions they want, you know, depending on what they want, like I did that Godzilla 84, started at 250. If you don't have that kind of budget, I can work with people, whatever you guys want. Other than that, I have a big print sale on my website, www.robo7.com. All my prints right now are $10 plus shipping and handling. They're all 11 by 17, and I have 22 by 28 size posters, but those are $40. Those are not on sale just yet. But I'm thinking about making them on sale. So that's basically what I have coming up right now. If anything changes, I'll let you know. But that's where I'm at right now.
So definitely everyone get out there and, bookmark and favorite, whatever. Check out robo7.com. Where else can we find you out there in the social media world to keep up with what you're doing?
Instagram's probably the best place. I was really big on Facebook, but Facebook I kind of lost a little bit of interest in. I have a Facebook art page. It's at Robo7Art. And Instagram is probably the best one. It's just Robo7, but written out. ROBOSEVEN, Robo7. That's probably where I post all my like progress shots and like sketches and, you know, any sort of artistic or kaiju, whatever it is that I come up with, I post on there out of all the social media. And I have Twitter too. I think it's Bellotti_John. And it's BELLOTTI_JOHN. So that's where I'm at. And DeviantArt too. So that's pretty much where you can find me.
All right, very cool. I'm gonna post all those in the YouTube description on this, and I'm gonna put them on the screen as we're talking about them too. So just tell me kind of some final thoughts of what you might have to say to some of the fans out there, someone who may have not heard of you before, but now are kind of getting their interest perked up. I'll give you the final word on that.
Oh, thanks. Well, I want to thank everyone that has supported me since 2014. I mean, I did this on a lark because I didn't want to spend money. Someone was selling a Godzilla, and I don't want to get long-winded, but I'm Italian, and that's how we work. That's how we roll. I didn't want to spend money on a Godzilla poster. I thought it was a little too overpriced. So I said, let me draw my own. And I did a Hedorah poster, Godzilla vs. Hedorah. And Ed Holland of Monster Attack Team reached out to me and said, can I publish this in the next issue of Monster Attack Team? And I said, oh my God, yeah, that'd be great. So we did. And then I did a Godzilla vs. Mothra. And I posted that as well on Facebook. And people started really reacting positively towards it. And then I started after that, I did Destroyer and King Kong and Terra Mechagodzilla. And I just started posting all over Facebook, and I really built a following. And then I started doing G-Fest and then every other comic convention. And every year it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. So I want to thank all the support, all the positive feedback I've gotten from everyone out there. For those that don't know me, please take a look at my work. You don't have to like it. And if you don't like it, that's cool, because there's a lot of really good kaiju artists out there. I'm not the only one. But if you do, just know I put a lot of heart and a lot of soul into my work. I put a lot of hard work into it. And I never waste a moment in my life to be at my drawing tablet. And if I have yesterday I came home from work, I was tired. My wife was in the office and I wanted to get in there. I had a half hour to kill. I started drawing Dada from Ultraman. Just any moment in time I have, I do this artwork, and I love it. And a lot of people have reacted to that. They see the love in there. So I'm very, very happy that people can see my passion. So for those, again, that if you see the work, just know that a lot of work goes into it. I don't trace anything. It's all from my heart. It's all just stuff that I love to do. So with that, I want to thank you, Nick, for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. It was very nice of you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, and I definitely encourage everyone to check it out and see new with John Bellotti and Robo7. Very good to have you here on the Monster Report, and looking forward to seeing what you have coming up in the future. So for me, Nick Adam Poling, John Bellotti Jr., have a great day.
Thank you.